gigantic trucks were beeping their horns at us, and people were waving and doing thumbs up. And at a time when our nation is so divided, it was amazing and wonderful to be inspired by people who understood right from wrong. And that's what has informed me over the years. And those are the kinds of things that I think I'm bringing to this race right now, because they're very personal, but they're also very universal. And I don't know if I would have been the same person 36 years ago when I first got in politics.
I love that. That's beautiful. And I think our listeners will love that as well. So many of us are moms, and it's so important to who we are.
When you think about it, if you're a mom, and you have a 3-year-old at nursery school, and you go out and maybe you even just have coffee with a friend, or you're out and you realize, oh my goodness, I'm going to be late to pick up that kid. I'm going to be late to pick up my son. And you're driving to that nursery school, or you're driving to that elementary school, or you're driving even to that high school, and you don't want your child thinking they have been abandoned. And then you think about what that family separation is. You can't deal with it. And that's, and in our state, we had a governor who sent a helicopter to the border and didn't want our state to accept refugees.
If our listeners would like to help out your campaign, how can they do that?
They can go online. They can go to benjealous.com and contribute. We could absolutely use it, and it will help us hire more organizers and get our message out. You could go online if you live in Maryland and click volunteer and go visit the closest office near you. If you don't live in Maryland, you could still click volunteer and come down. This is a race that is worth winning. There is a major difference between us and our opponent on healthcare, on education, on moving our economy, on opportunity. And people can and should get involved, and I hope they will.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been really great, and it's such fun to learn about everything you've done for the Democratic Party and the Maryland Democratic Party over the years, and we are really looking forward to you guys winning in November.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it, and I look forward to listening to the podcast. Good luck. Keep going. Keep doing this. Keep doing this.
Hi guys, I'm Kales.
And I'm Allison.
And we host Novel Predictions, a podcast where we laugh at ourselves and each other as one of us tries to predict the ending of a book the other has already read.
Essentially, one of us is torturing the other.
It's not torture, it's hilarious as we try and predict the story from some popular novels like Eragon, Fault in Our Stars, and more.
We read the beginning, we talk about the story, and we try not to give away how royally the newbie reader is screwing up the plot.
So join us every other week for fun, ruthless reviews of popular novels. Subscribe and follow us on social media, and we invite you to read and laugh along.
As we torture each other.
It's not torture, seriously.
Maybe a little.
Okay, it's just a little.
Thanks for listening, and keep making novel predictions.
We really need a new outro.
I am here in this segment with Eve Hurwitz, who is running for the Maryland Senate in District 33. Hi, Eve.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. Let's jump in. I know you have a kind of great background story, so could you tell us a little bit about your background and why you decided to run for the state Senate?
Sure. So I'm a combat veteran. I'm a mom of 5. I'm a business owner, and I'm a community activist and organizer. I was 8 years active duty, left active duty in 2010. I joined because of 9/11. There's a whole story there. And I got out of active duty. I was in the reserves for a while. I started my own business right after I left active duty. I had a couple of rough birth and postpartum experiences that kind of opened my eyes to the plight of mothers and families and children in America, and the lack of paid leave and the lack of support, especially postpartum. And I got involved in several different initiatives. One was with the Family Act with the National Partnership for Women and Families and Kirsten Gillibrand's office and Rosa DeLaura's office when they introduced the paid leave legislation. And then with the Milky Way Foundation, which is a kind of a motherhood breastfeeding nonprofit. So I was kind of in that activist type realm anyway. And I had considered running. I'd thought about it because when I left the Navy, right before I left the Navy, a guy I knew in my aviation community who flew in the same plane that I did ran for Congress after he got out of the Navy and won. And I'm like, well, So it kind of, it was in the back of my head, but like many women, I was like, well, I don't have the experience. And then when 2016 happened, and it wasn't so much the election of the current president, it was kind of more watching our Constitution get trampled on. As an officer, I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution, and I felt that that was just not really, the Constitution was not really being followed shortly after the election, especially with the Russian interference. A lot of my training, the hairs on the back of my neck have been standing up for literally probably about a year and a half before the election about everything that was happening with Russia. And what I did on December 19th, which was the day that the Electoral College met, I was part of a nationwide protest for D19, which was essentially calling attention to the fact that the Constitution and the Federalist Papers tell us if there's any question of foreign interference in an election, the vote should not go to the Electoral College. It bypasses the Electoral College and should go to the House of Representatives because they have access to the intel that the Electoral College members don't. Nobody was doing that. Nobody even brought it up. Nobody was paying attention to that. And that's when kind of my vocal activism started. And that day of the protest, people started asking me to run for office after they found out about my history and my past. And I started thinking about it. And then the Women's March came upon us. It was 4 or 5 days before the Women's March. My youngest was about 3 months old, and I was going to go into D.C., but the weather was just going to be so crappy. And I'm like, well, I'll just go to the Annapolis March. And it turned out there wasn't one. So I organized the Annapolis Women's March in 5 days with the help of some great people. And that was kind of the day that solidified it for me. Just being in the community and people asking me to run for office again and thinking, you know what? Yeah, why not? So that was kind of when I decided to.
All right, there's a lot of things I want to pull on there, but let's let's jump before we get back into all of that. Let's talk a little bit about Senate District 33. So
Sure.
We've mentioned on this podcast before that the state Senate and the state House in Maryland are majority Democrats, but it's been trending slightly more Republican over the past few years. And of course, there's a Republican governor right now who hopefully won't be there after this year. But right now there's a Republican governor. But your Senate district is currently held by a Republican who, in fact, has never been challenged by a Democrat, which I find kind of shocking. So tell me a little bit about this district, where it's located, and kind of what the politics of it are.
Sure. So District 33 is a little more than half of Anne Arundel County. It is, I can go, you want the list of towns? Sure. I can go down the list if you want. So it's outskirts of Annapolis, Crownsville, Crofton, Gambrels, Millersville, Davidsville, Odenton, some of Glen Burnie, some of Severn, Severna Park, Arden on the Severn, Harold Harbor, Cape St. Clair, and Riva. And I think, and Arnold. So it's the 7th largest district in Maryland, about 130,000 people. And the perception is that it's a Republican district, but it's actually really not. So there's 39,000 registered Republicans, 33,000 registered Democrats, and 23,000 unaffiliated. So it's a very flippable, not to mention the 30,000 people that I personally am not going to write off. One of my passions is engaging people who maybe have not previously been engaged or haven't voted, because I think that we really need to get all of the people involved in their governance, regardless of whether they're affiliated, whether they voted before. So it really is a very purple district. And I look forward to that. I don't know if you know this, but I have purple hair, and that's all of our logos are purple. So purple's like a thing for me, always has been my whole life. And my opponent was appointed in 2009 and has run unopposed twice. So he's about 70 years old, Catholic, far-right Republican, pretty much votes party line. And, not a bad guy, just out of touch with what the people of the district really need. And
you actually got more votes than he did in the primary, by a little bit.
I did, yes. About 9,000 people came out to vote. We got 118 votes more than him. And the greatest part of that is that at that time, he had $100,000 in the bank, and we had $600 in the bank. And because I am about people. I am all about people. I am I don't take money from corporate PACs. I don't take money from publicly traded companies. Most of my donations are individuals or small businesses. And actually, I think at this point, all of our donations are individual small businesses. No, I do have a couple of union donations because I really strongly believe in unions. I think that unions are going to save the middle class. But I really believe that the people are just not being heard. I think that politics these days is both sides. It's all about the money and special interest, and it's not really about taking care of the people anymore that it needs to be.
And so when you're going around and talking to people and at events, you have a lot of events, what are you hearing from people?
They are dissatisfied mainly because they're sick of the same old thing. The politician comes along, says everything is going to be different, everything's going to be all different, and nothing changes. And here's where I think it fails. I do believe that most people in office, they have nothing but the best of intentions. They really try, but there's a machine. There's definitely a machine. There's kind of this whole corporate driven machine behind everything. And I think what we need is to bring the people in. So one of the things I'm going to do, and I'm going to do this regardless of, I won't need a vote to do this, is I'm going to set up a technology interface with the electorate. So what I mean by that is one of the reasons why people feel so disconnected is that in order to actually participate in any kind of hearings in the General Assembly or testify, you have to go to Annapolis and wait literally about 8 hours on average to testify or be part of any kind of legislation, which is ridiculous considering we have these things called mobile phones and you have Zoom and Skype and FaceTime, and we can easily sign people up to testify and then say, okay, we're going to text you or call you when the bill comes up, and then we're going to let you know when we're ready for you to testify. And you just open up a screen and you let people be at a hearing or testify at a hearing. And I think bringing people into their governance like that, even if we're not making change as fast as they want, makes them feel heard and validated and cared about. Like, we want to know what you need and what you want. Please tell us, and we're going to make it easy for you to do so.
You've started to sort of talk about some of the issues that are important, but what are some of the issues that are really driving you and driving people you think to the polls this year?
I think that we have a basic lack of caring for families, especially mothers and newborns. The entire world, all of the countries of the world, developed or undeveloped countries, all of them have paid family leave except for Papua New Guinea, Suriname, and the United States. And it's ridiculous, and I'm sick of it. We do have 4 states that have paid leave. And last session, Maryland passed 6 weeks of paid leave for state employees. So I intend on expanding that to 12 weeks for all working Marylanders, which is what the military gets. It's what it's actually foreign countries get, usually 6 months, a year or more. So 12 weeks is a minimum. But we really need that. That's one of my biggest initiatives, is to get paid family leave. So we are not sending mothers. 25% of American mothers go back to work 10 days after giving birth, which is horrendous. And it's no surprise that we have so many problems in our country. It's because we're really not taking care of the next generation from the very beginning, from the most important time. So that's kind of number one initiative. Very close to that is we have a problem with our education in Anne Arundel County especially. We used to be top in education. We have dropped all the way down to 12th, and we need to get that back. And the way we do that is actually investing in our teachers, in our schools, in our infrastructure, where there's something called Question 1, which is a referendum that's going to be on the November ballot, which is going to get the casino revenue that was originally promised to schools. It's actually going to get it to the schools, because that hasn't really been happening, essentially because they've been saying, oh, casino money is going to schools, so this money that's budgeted for you, you got that from the casinos, so we're going to take that out of the budget and give it to somebody else. So they essentially have been moving around the money because of the supposed extra, quote-unquote, money that's going to schools, but it's really not extra. So we just need to really shift our priorities, because I don't think our priorities right now in Maryland, or at least Anne Arundel County, are taking care of our teachers and our students in our schools. So that was 2, right? Family leave and schools. Gosh, if I had to pick a third, that's going to be hard. I mean, there's environmental concerns. There's this. Where do I start right now? There's a lot.
So I think you kind of started to answer this question earlier, but something that I've been thinking about a lot is just the number of women this year around the country who have service backgrounds, who are running for office and who are running for office as Democrats. So, I think a lot of people think that the military is overwhelmingly Republican, and that may or may not be true, but we're seeing so many people and men who have service backgrounds running as Democrats this year too. Do you think that there is something about having a service background that leads people to want to run for office, but also that may help people be inclined to run as a Democrat right now?
Definitely. So there's a few things.